Hello and welcome to the Quoted Interview Series, where we get to the bottom of what's top of mind with rock stars in the journalism industry. The journalists themselves, reporters, columnists, thought leaders, owners, executives, photographers, you name it. I'm your host, Lou Carlozo, the editor in chief of Quoted, coming to you from the beautiful Quoted Quonset Hut in Chicago. And on today's show, Maria Villarroel, who is a news reporter for Reach PLC, writing for the Mirror US, the Daily Express US, and the Irish Star. She has written for various news organizations, including the Latin Times, where she covered the 2024 US presidential election from a Latino lens, as well as LinkedIn News. She has a master's degree in international communication, but why stop there, ladies and gentlemen? She's going for a PhD in political communication at St. John's University in New York, where she is based. She has a deep passion for journalism, storytelling, politics, and democratic values. Maria is committed to truth and accuracy in her reporting. She is also committed enough to be here as well. Maria, welcome to the Quoted Interview Series.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here talking to you today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great to have you here. Now, one of the first things I would love to know about is the actual work that you're doing day in and day out. You've gone from different types of experiences, presidential campaigns with the Latin Times to doing work for LinkedIn News. Bring us up to date with the work that you're doing now that spans several publications, of course, and also what that entails on a day to day basis.
Yeah, for sure. So right now I'm a news reporter for Reach PLC, and that entails writing for three different websites here at our US office, and that is the Mirror US, the Daily Express US, and the Irish Star. Um, because I'm based in New York, and because of the nature of the news cycle right now, that entails also writing a lot about politics. So I write a lot about the Trump administration, a lot about and what they're doing. So anything related to immigration, the economy, any executive order that Trump does, we're there covering and writing it, breaking news, doing it live, doing all that good stuff, good news stuff. And yeah, I mean, I read for all the three websites that we have. And it's been awesome. It's been great. I've learned a lot about the political landscape here in the US, which in the past year has obviously been incredibly busy, not only with the elections, but also now again with the Trump administration. And every day it's incredibly busy, and every day it's a new learning curve and a learning experience. But I think as journalists, we're all here doing it as best as we can and trying to keep doing our job despite how crazy it gets in the outside world.
Yep, you just named it right there. Doing our best, no matter how crazy it gets in the outside world. And crazy indeed it is. In the midst of all of this, you are climbing an incredible mountain for someone who, if I may share with the audience, you're 23 and you're
I
going
am,
for
yeah.
this doctorate, your doctorate in political communication at St. John's.
Yes.
How has the work you've done in journalism informed this new part of your journey and what you're trying to do? It sounds like once you get out of the program, you'll have a different and far enriched perspective in terms of what's going on with journalism and political journalism in particular.
Yeah, for sure. And that's thank you for mentioning that and for bringing that up. I think that both my professional and my academic experiences are extremely linked and intertwined. I don't think I would have one without the other, if that makes total sense. I've always wanted to be a journalist ever since I was a kid. it's just always been my dream. I remember as a kid just sitting with my parents watching the night news, the evening news, and trying to keep up with everything that was happening, even if I didn't understand everything because I was a kid, and all these complex concepts that I couldn't understand. But it was just always so fascinating to me. So I knew that I always wanted to be a journalist. And then when I got to college and I um, you know, started really venturing into this world, I also realized just how passionate I am about those values that we hold in this occupation, accuracy, being a watchdog, for those in power, being a watchdog for democracy. That's something that I hold very dear to my heart as a Venezuelan and as an immigrant. So I also felt, compelled to keep studying and keep, I guess educating myself when it comes to this incredibly complex and beautiful industry. Also, my parents are academics themselves. They both have PhDs. So for me, it was also, kind of the continuation of their legacy to me. So I kind of just kept going. I always knew that I wanted to do a PhD. I always knew that I wanted to get there. But I never thought that I would do it at 23. But it's one of those things that, the opportunity kind of presented itself at St. John's and I just couldn't say no. So here I am, doing being a full-time journalist and also writing my dissertation.
That is incredible. I love it. I
Thank
love it. I love it. I, of course, have never met mom and dad, but if I may speak for them,
you.
I'm sure they are incredibly proud of you. And
Thank
boy, there are just not a lot of people who have a master's degree, which I have, let alone a doctorate, which I don't have in the
you.
profession. So you will be able to, with your youth and with this knowledge and your energy and the experience you already have, really be able to bring even more to the media landscape. Now, on that point, one of the things that I have always found for myself most difficult, and any journalist who doesn't say at some level it's hard, I don't know that they're telling the truth, which is to separate my feelings or even my heritage from what is going on in the world versus my job. So when The Sopranos were on TV years ago, I'm an Italian American and I take great exception to mafia stereotypes. So when people were falling all over themselves talking about what a great show it was, I wrote an editorial that was pretty strident about what a terrible thing it was to have all these mafia stereotypes on the air. The editorial got spiked and I was told maybe you're getting a little too close for comfort in terms of what this does to you personally. There's a lot in the news going on right now with Trump in Venezuela. And of course, it's barely a disguised secret on a news level that this is about oil. And you are a Venezuelan immigrant. And you see all of this stuff that is being directed against people of Latino origin by the current administration. How do you keep any feelings you might have separate as you go about covering the news?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's such a difficult question, and I agree with you. I think it's so difficult to keep your feelings aside, especially at least for me, I have family. Most of my family is still in Venezuela, so you know, kind of keeping my own personal values and my own opinions and thoughts and feelings aside from my job and what I do is extremely difficult. Um, to be honest, I wish I had a better answer on how to do it, but I think it's just of being extremely self-aware and really just putting the facts out there, and going with your sources, getting more sources than usual, and getting quality sources and that can give you important perspectives and more nuanced perspectives. You mentioned the Venezuela story of it all. And I actually did write a story about that. And I also agreed with you. I was like, okay, this has to be about oil and this has to be about this. And I went with that preconceived notion. But as I talked to more people who were experts on the matter, they started, telling me much more, not only about the oil, but also the politics of it all, the socialism in Venezuela and capitalism in the US. And, all of these extremely nuanced and complex concepts that, maybe I wouldn't have thought about because of my own personal identity and my heritage. So I think with that, I think that's like when sources become much more important and getting quality and a diverse opinions is what makes our job stand out and continue being objective and also being able to paint the entire picture. And aside from that, also having good editors and good, producers for those who are in broadcast also helps a lot. I know that for my editors, I have enough confidence with them that I can tell them like, hey, this is what they told me. What do you think about this? And we kind of bounce those ideas together as a team. And I think that's another layer that helps, kind of separate yourself from those feelings. But I'd definitely be lying to you if I didn't tell you it was hard and it's a process that you have to do consciously and you have to do every single day just to keep your work true and accurate and fair.
True, accurate, and fair. I want to tell our viewing audience that those are not just words. This is what Maria does. I was looking at a very recent piece that you did about the $3,000 self deportation bonus that Kristi Noem and our administration in Washington are offering to people if they just get out. And I love how you stuck to the facts, you stuck to your guns, you used context really well to highlight what might be an absurd situation if it were editorialized, but instead, just by using what was there, allowing readers to judge for themselves. And solid work you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot.
Now, as we continue along the path of how to separate feelings, another thing that I think is getting increasingly more difficult for journalists to stay on the sidelines about is press freedom. I just had Clayton Weimers of the Reporters Without Borders North America organization. He's the executive director there. And he talked about how low ranking the US actually is in press freedom. You might think we were one, two, three. We're buried down there somewhere about 41st, I want to say it was.
I
We
believe so, yes.
face increasing pressure right now, not just from forces that would shut us down, the people who have plastered fake news all over us, but even from within the industry itself. Jeff Bezos spiking the editorial in the Washington Post endorsing Kamala Harris, the Los Angeles Times doing the same, Larry Ellison moving behind the scenes to exercise control at Paramount so that Barry Weiss, a conservative firebrand, is now in charge of CBS News, actually spiked a piece that 60 Minutes was getting ready to do about Venezuelan immigration and deportation. It just seems to be more harrowing a time than ever, but also more necessary than ever for us to speak out about press freedom and do something about it. Where do you stand on this? And not to put a spotlight on you, but what might you be doing, or what do you see your role as in terms of keeping us standing our ground and even advancing press freedom right now?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question that we should definitely all be asking ourselves. Like you mentioned, the US this year dropped down a few spots in the Press Freedom Index from Reporters Without Borders. And what you said is a misconception that a lot of people have, that they think that the US is among the first few in the Press Freedom Index in the world. And that's simply not the case. And if we keep going in this direction, we will continue to drop and the conditions that journalists are working in right now will continue to drop and that will cause an immense repercussions for the information that the public gets and how educated people are on these extremely important issues like politics and government and just day-to-day life. Um, I'm very grateful that I have not been put yet in a situation where I have to, stand my ground and be like, I will not be covering this. I will not, or I have to speak out for my reporting. I've been very lucky that everything that I've written has, not been put through that political lens, if you will, even though I write about politics, but through that, I guess, editorial lens. But I can speak for other people, for other journalists that I've spoken to as part of my academic research. Actually, my doctoral dissertation is about press freedom, and a lot of people that I've talked to have been extremely stressed and terrified that. Um, they will eventually will not be able to report or write opinion pieces that are not in line with these billionaires that are owning these huge news outlets like the Washington Post, LA Times, et cetera, et cetera. And that's something that's terrifying, frankly, that, these titans, these huge, amazing and professional journalists that they have these fears, that they will not be able to do their job soon. That's something that shouldn't be happening. And again, personally, I haven't had the the necessity to stand out for that, but I think the same thing of what I was talking about earlier of um keeping to the facts, being objective, and diversifying your sources. I think that's how we at least continue to do our job in a very basic level and continue to be fair and balanced.
Yeah. And since I'm speaking to someone who is the first and perhaps will be the only journalist who is studying for a doctorate with a concentration in press freedom, I'm wondering, with the work that you've done so far on that doctorate, whether any surprises have emerged or aha moments that have
Yeah.
built up your understanding of where we are today, 2026, right around the corner, vis-a-vis press freedom.
Yeah, I think honestly, this may not be for journalists, this may not be too groundbreaking, but I think for me at least, how persistent financial issues for journalists are and how the lack of finances and resources has made it extremely hard for journalists to continue doing their job. Um, I've talked to a lot of I've several journalists actually for my dissertation, and one thing that comes up every single time is the need for more resources for companies when it comes to journalism and when it comes to journalists doing their jobs. Now we have journalists who are not only writing, but they also sometimes have to go out and take pictures, and now they also have to upload it in the website, and they have to look for the pictures themselves, or they have to do video, or they have to, um, post it on social media and pitch it to the social media team. It's doing all of these uh, different responsibilities that maybe you can speak more on this, but people in previous years didn't have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're combining roles and making it just more difficult for people. And also, with social media right now, there's also the question of speed. Now everyone wants to be the first to post a story, to break a story, but then that gives us less time to go back and verify our sources and verify our information. But going back to the finances of it all, something also um, that surprised me. Again, I don't work for a Jeff Bezos owned company or a billionaire owned company, but something that people that do have told me is that what I was just mentioning, that they're terrified of. what if they, post something that um upsets the executives or that upsets the owners, that upsets this 1% billionaire class and how that might affect their job. That's something that I wouldn't have thought about, and that's something that, I think as an industry we have to think very carefully and beware of where that will take us.
So when do I get to read the paper?
Hopefully this year before May.
That is just absolutely fascinating. And in a short answer, you hit on a lot of major pain points and challenges for the industry. I'll tell you this, in 2009, when I was at the Chicago Tribune, that was the first time I was handed a box camera, like the kind you would get from a drugstore.
Oh my gosh.
Cardboard
Yeah.
box camera. I was told to go out and take pictures for my stories. I was like, you got to be kidding me. These are going to be the worst pictures you've ever seen. And I went up to my photo editor, a guy named Mike Zajakowski, and he said, look, I'm going to give you a 90-second crash course. Point the camera at one thing and take as many damn pictures as you can. And out of those 24 pictures, 23 will suck because you're not a photographer, but one will
For sure.
probably be good. And
Yeah.
it turned out to be great advice. Add to the list of all of the things that you have mentioned. I have been my own copy editor, a strict no no. I have been the source editor. I have
Yeah.
framed photos, retoned photos, created graphic arts elements, all for the same publication at times, in addition to the social media elements that you named, and then going out and teasing them on LinkedIn by tagging every single person I could think
For
of who might
sure.
be eager to read the piece. I will be frank, I don't know when you start to wear even more than three hats, whether it's possible for anyone, myself
Yeah.
included, to do things effectively. But we are in an age right now where we have tools that will make it easier to do those things. AI
Yeah.
is very controversial. We talk about it a lot on this video series. But one thing is, if it is used judiciously and used well by
For
a
sure.
conscientious reporter, it can be a benefit. I see that there are two issues, though, right now that I really mourn for today's journalists. Is one, I knew what it was like to work in a newsroom surrounded by like
Yeah.
50, 60, 100 reporters, and you could go up and bounce ideas off of people or hang out in the break room or go out to lunch with someone. And that sort of interplay, that iron sharpening iron, is missing today. And then in terms of just the resources, as you said, we didn't have to worry about any of that 15 years ago. And nowadays, you're lucky if you want to get, let's say, I don't know, sound recording equipment and you're
For
going out and
sure.
doing multimedia journalism. You'll probably have to pay for it yourself, especially if you're a freelancer. It's guaranteed. Newsrooms are strapped. Reporters are scared. Best practices aren't being passed on. Lou, you're
Mhm.
such a cheerful person to talk to, aren't you? I think there is good news. The
Yeah.
model that a lot of people in the industry are upholding as the absolute platinum standard is the Guardian. They are able to report fearlessly about what's going on. They are not intimidated by any lawsuits from the current administration, most of which are frivolous beyond frivolous, but are being settled because the media companies don't want to deal with it anymore, which of course plays right into the hands of those making the lawsuits. The Guardian is run by a trust and it's not in the United States. And so they have been able to go at the reporting, oddly enough, I think the way that most institutions would be going at it if it were a generation or two ago, but now they seem to be outliers doing fantastic work. Well, it was the level of work a lot of publications were doing. So I sort of hold them up as an
Yeah.
example with press freedom of what can be done.
For sure, for sure. I think they're awesome. I'm so glad you bring up the Guardian because I use their information all the time to also educate myself because they really are awesome. And I think that, like you mentioned, they do that standard journalism of staying objective, but also entertaining in a way and informative. So I agree, and I hope that moving forward that there's some changes and you shouldn't feel bad for, mentioning all of that negative stuff because I do feel like sometimes talking to other journalists, it does feel like that, like being a Debbie Downer. But I think that as much as the more that we talk about these issues, the more that it'll get us all thinking and hopefully bringing some change.
Yeah, that is exactly what the video series is about. It's about getting people to talk. It's about getting people to come up with productive solutions to these painful challenges. And journalism has survived a lot worse. So
For
I think
sure.
we're not only going to survive, but if we decentralize and we come up with novel funding sources and we get people together who are committed enough, great things can
Yeah.
happen. I see you as one of those people who could really help blaze a trail in the future. I'm going to look forward to following your career. Maria, thank you so much for being on the Quoted Interview Series.
Yeah, thank you for having me and thank you for having this space for all of us to talk. Thank you.
That's what we're about. Maria Villarroel is a news reporter for Reach PLC. She writes for the Mirror US, the Daily Express US, and Irish Star. Be sure to look for Maria on LinkedIn. And thank you for tuning into the Quoted Interview Series. Our producer in Chicago is Ken Montone. A special thanks to the co founders of Quoted, Dan Simon and Matt Neller. Thanks as well to the Quoted A team, Kelly Jura, Ashlyn Anderson, Callie Chambers, Ray Lynn, and Rebecca Young. Our Columbia College Chicago intern is Jacob Areza. Don't forget that Quoted is the #1 platform for bringing journalists, PRs, and subject matter experts together, not just in service of the story, but also in the spirit of building community and connections. I'm Lou Carlozo, your host. Remember to tune into my financial services podcast, Bankadelic, which you can hear via Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud. Until next time, stay true, stay tuned, and stay suddenly connected.